Okay, I want you to pay attention to this, because I think we all may have missed something really important in episode 4 of The Chosen season 5. You see, there's this scene that everyone really loves where the women of The Chosen recognize all that Jesus has done in their lives. It's a really beautiful moment. But that's the problem. I was so touched by this scene the first time I saw it, I missed something major. You see, the liturgy that they're reciting is called the Denu. It's a portion of the Passover Seder where Jewish people recognize all that God did to rescue them from slavery in Egypt, and celebrate that even if God had only done one of those things, it would have been enough. Now, if that were the only reason The Chosen included this, to show us this Jewish tradition, it would have been a cool tradition, a nice detail. But it's not. The Denu is included because it tells us something absolutely critical about our relationship with Jesus. Something that reveals both why these women worship Jesus and why this man walks away. And in this episode of The Chosen Explained, I'm going to show you why the Denu might be more important to your relationship with Jesus than you think. Because while it's tempting to think that none of us could ever make the terrible decision that Judas makes, what the Denu reveals is that these are decisions that almost all of us make, all the time, without even realizing it. And it shows us what we need to do so that in the end, we can end up like this and never like this. Okay, I want you to take a moment and imagine that you're sitting at the table of Jesus' Last Supper. It's Passover, and for the last few hours, you've been recalling the many things God did to set your people free from slavery in Egypt. You've dipped bitter herbs in the salt water to remind you of all the years your people suffered, drank wine to celebrate how God delivered you, eaten matzah to remind you of your hasty exit once Pharaoh finally let you go. And somehow, in the midst of all of this, you've begun to recognize that every one of these things is connected to Jesus, which means that you're especially alert when Jesus looks at John and asks him to begin something called the Denu. Now, the Denu is something that Jews have practiced for the last 1,000 years, maybe even all the way back to the time of Jesus. It's a psalm, a song, in which there's a call and response thanking God for each key moment in the Exodus, and then responding Denu, which means it would have been enough. It begins, if he had taken us out of Egypt and not made judgments on them, it would have been enough. If he had made judgments on them and had not made them on their gods, it would have been enough. It continues, if he had made them on their gods and had not killed their firstborn, if he had killed their firstborn and not given us their money, if he had given us their money and had not split the sea for us, if he had split the sea for us and had not taken us through it on dry land, if he had taken us through it on dry land and not pushed down our enemies in the sea, if he had pushed down our enemies in the sea and had not fed us the manna, if he had fed us the manna and had not given us the Shabbat, if he had given us the Shabbat and had not brought us close to Mount Sinai, if he had brought us close to Mount Sinai and had not given us the Torah, if he had given us the Torah and had not brought us into the land of Israel, and if he had brought us into the land of Israel and had not built us the temple, it would have been enough. Now, here's the thing. It's actually really easy to misunderstand what this song is saying. When you end every statement with, it would have been enough, it might sound like you're declaring that if all God had done was part the Red Sea, for example, but never given you the Torah, or Shabbat, or even the land of Israel itself, it would have been enough. But this isn't actually what it means at all. What the song is saying is that God is gracious to do any of these things. The plagues, the manna, the Torah, any of them would warrant unparalleled gratitude for God's goodness and love for us. So how much more amazing is it that God did all of these things? I mean, I think of it this way. My wife and I tried for 2 years to have our first daughter. And when we finally did, I would have totally said, God, if this is the only child we ever have, it would have been enough. We are so thankful for this one amazing blessing. So how much more amazing was God to bless us with another daughter a few years later? And here's why it's so important to understand this nuance. Because Judas doesn't. Throughout the episode, Judas is questioning one thing Jesus does after another. Judas wishes that Jesus would just flat out reject Rome's taxes. He wants him to declare himself king and take the throne. He wishes he would just perform another miracle and put swords in people's hands so that they could rise up and push Rome out. Because for Judas, what Jesus is doing isn't Denu. It isn't enough. Now, of course, this is what's happening in the show. In Scripture, all we really know is that Judas was stealing money from the disciples and that Satan entered into him. But either way, it's still safe to assume that whatever his reasons, Jesus wasn't enough for him. And can I ask you a question? Is he enough for you? Now, before you answer that, just pause for a moment. I mean, I'm like you. I want to say, of course not. But is that really true? I mean, what was the last thing you thought about that you thought might make you happy? Was it Jesus, or was it a product, or an achievement, or a person, or an experience? What do you spend more time on each day? Things for work, or school, hobbies, television, social media, or growing closer to Jesus? I mean, it's shockingly easy for Jesus to not be enough for us. And this is why the Denu is even more important than we think it is. Denu describes how God rescued the Hebrews. But here's the thing, as soon as they were free, they immediately looked for other saviors. They erected a golden calf. They longed to go back to Egypt. They built armies and demanded a king. This is why God commands festivals like the Passover, a celebration where they recall every moment of their exodus. And it's why they sing the Denu. Because if they don't remember that what God did was enough, then they will always look for something more and something else. But wait, what about what I said at the beginning? If all this is about showing us that the disciples remembered the events of the past and recited a special song called the Denu, if that's all this is, that would be interesting, but not significant. What's truly amazing is what happens later. At the end of the episode, Jesus sits down to have dinner with the women who've been following him these past few years. And as this meal begins, Jesus does something strange. He reminds them of the pain he's caused them. How he asked Mary Magdalene to host a Shabbat dinner when she didn't think she could. How he made his mother worry when he stayed behind in the temple. How Mary and Martha suffered while Lazarus was dead. He points out how each of them has given so much for him. And it's at this moment that they give him something truly special, a Denu of their own. And I think you have to hear it to truly appreciate it.
If I had only been given the joy of holding you in my arms that night in Bethlehem, on a cold ground, and not been able to see you perform signs and wonders, it would have been enough.
If you had performed signs and wonders and not called me by name that night,
It would have been enough. If you had healed Mary of Magdala of her demons, and not healed my Ima, or called my husband after your miracle.
If you had called Simon Peter, and not healed my friend,
It would have been enough.
if you had healed Ethan and not raised my brother,
It
would have been enough.
If you had raised my brother, and not defended my honor when I worshipped you,
it
would have been enough.
If you would have defended Mary of Bethany, but not given meaning to my life, which had been so unhappy and unfulfilled, by letting me support and participate in this miraculous family that I do believe will change the world.
It would have been enough.
I hope you realize what just happened here. Each of these women has given so much for Jesus, but each one realizes how much he's given to them. And let me say that again, to them. Because that's what makes this moment so special. It's that each one of them professes that if Jesus had only transformed one of their lives, it would have been enough. They're saying, even if you didn't save me, it would have been enough. Just think about that. Can you imagine that? Being that humble, that grateful, loving Jesus so much that it didn't matter if you got anything in return. He was enough. I mean, these women are the opposite of Judas, who always wants Jesus to be more than he is. They're the opposite of Shmuel, for whom no miracle is convincing enough. They're the opposite of religious leaders for whom no argument is compelling enough. And sometimes they're even the opposite of the disciples, for whom no position seems to be elevated enough. These women don't need all of it. They're grateful for any of it. But again, here's what makes the Denu so amazing. Jesus didn't just do some of it. He didn't just change the lives of some of them or some of us. He did all of it. Jesus is the Passover lamb who was slain to free us from our sins. He is the bread without yeast, the one without sin who was broken for our sakes. And he is the Son who dies so that we can be set free. Jesus is God who loved us so much that he came to earth to be with us, to walk with us, to know our pain and experience our suffering. He is proof that there is no limit to the Father's love for us. And any of those things alone would be enough. You know, I remember the moment my YouTube channel finally took off. I'd been struggling for 2 years and no one was watching anything I did. I'd actually quit YouTube for about a week until one day, a video I did on The Chosen just took off. And I remember when the channel reached 100,000 views and 10,000 subscribers, and I thought to myself, if all God ever did was this, it would be enough. How blessed am I to get to experience this? But the truth is, it was already enough. If all God had ever done was allow me to be a pastor of a church, it would have been enough. If I'd never pastored a church and only had my family, it would have been enough. If I'd never had my family and just heard the gospel, it would have been enough. And if I'd never heard the gospel but lived in a world where others did, it would have been enough. Because the Denu is a reminder that this isn't about me. It's all about Jesus. And just his very presence, his very existence is enough. But he loves us enough to make sure that it's not all that he does for us. And so let me ask you, where do you need to just say, Denu? Maybe you're thinking about how Jesus has been present in your life and you say, it would have been enough if all he'd ever done was let me hear the gospel that one Sunday. It would have been enough if all he'd ever done was heal me that one time. It would have been enough if all he'd done was bless me with my parents or my kids or my siblings or my friends. And honestly, it would have been enough if all he'd ever done was give these things to others. I mean, I know that sounds strange, maybe even unbelievable, but what these women show us is what the heart of a disciple truly looks like. What it is that can protect us from making the same mistake that Judas makes. Because in the end, the question we all face each and every day is Jesus enough? Not just because of what he's done for us or what he promises us. Is he enough just because of who he is? That he is Lord? Because when we can love him for that reason, then we will always have enough. We will always be able to say, Denu. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, then you're going to love my new book called The Forgotten Teachings of Jesus, Rediscovering the Bible with The Chosen Season 1. This book is going to show you amazing insights about the world of Jesus that are going to change the way that you watch The Chosen and the way you read the Bible. And if you go to brandonrobbinsministry.com/book and add your order number, you can also get study questions that will help you to dive even deeper into the show and even deeper into the Bible. Thank you so much for watching today. And if you'd like to see another video that's going to help you dive even deeper into the episodes of The Chosen, just click this link right here.